Absolutely not. There is no potential whatsoever that this would approach the scale of Chernobyl. Chernobyl was a completely different kind of reactor and a different kind of accident. Chernobyl was a giant core filled with graphite, which is kind of like charcoal. And when it exploded, the charcoal set on fire and burned for days. These reactors are cooled with water and nothing like it. You might see a meltdown in the core, but let's say that's very unlikely. And we're already getting ahead of ourselves by predicting that.
The UN Secretary General has said that this nuclear facility must not be used as part of any military operation. Do you see any scenario where Russia and Ukraine would simply just clear that area?
I think we're seeing it take place right now. Quickly remember that the Russians raced into this plant and took it in the third week of the war when it's not even in Donetsk. It's a $40 billion plant, and they wanted it. They want it for electricity. The Ukrainians want it. They want it for electricity. So both sides have a great deal of interest in keeping the plant safe, operational, and for the future, it's a war prize. Right now, it could go back to the Ukrainians. So there's really very, very little incentive for anybody to let that plant go into a dangerous situation.
We've been looking at the concerns surrounding this facility for weeks, including speaking with you earlier this month. Some people who we've spoken to have pointed to the spent fuel that this facility has. Others are worried about whether there's enough staff to man this facility. What do you believe is the biggest immediate concern surrounding Zaporizhzhia right now?
I'm really glad you mentioned the spent fuel because I think a very small incident in the spent fuel storage area could be used by one or both sides to hype up the hysteria over what's going on there. The spent fuel is a relatively small problem. I mean, compared to even the Japanese experience in Fukushima, it's a very tiny problem. But if someone were to blow up one of the containers of spent fuel, it would be a local accident. It would not have any effect probably beyond a mile or two. That's what I think the two sides are accusing each other right now of, is planning a provocation. The provocation is not going to be melting down one of the plants, because as I said earlier, they're far too valuable to treat them that way. But provocation, maybe something with the spent fuel is possible.
When we last spoke to you, you mentioned how facilities like this are built in a way that can withstand attacks like this. You've also mentioned that this is obviously different to Chernobyl. It's structured differently, but we're hearing reports that 3 out of 4 power supply lines linking this plant to Ukraine's national grid has been damaged. What could that result in?
A plant like this has redundant supplies of power. If they have knocked out 3 of the 4 lines, well, that's probably very important, and it is removing one of those redundant sources. But look at the following. You have a town of 50,000 people next to the plant, and there's no information coming out saying that plant has lost lights and power. So that plant is getting, that town is getting lots and lots of electricity, and it is the town that supports the reactor facility. So at the moment, anyway, there's no problem there. There are other redundant sources, such as the diesel generators that are on the site. And the final thing is that the reactor itself, one of the reactors, can be used to make electricity to support all of the reactors to keep their cooling systems going. So at the moment, those redundant systems look like they have not been challenged.
Now, there's also been claims that members of Russia's nuclear corporation have urgently left this facility. From the outside, that doesn't look too promising, does it? What do you take away from that?
That's one of those stories that you read and you wonder what the sources are and how accurate it is. Obviously, if they told everybody to get out of town, there's some kind of a problem that they're worried about. I think more likely it's that Ukraine has isolated the plant. It's not that the incoming electricity is isolated. It's they can no longer sell electricity. So the whole plant just has to be shut down and put into cold shutdown. If that's the case, you probably don't need the Russian experts on site, because the site may remain in cold shutdown for the months or even years to come.
Well, we'll watch with interest. Bob Kelley, a very fragile situation, but we always appreciate your time and to explain these things to us. Thank you very much.
Nice to be with you.